October 30th, 1961, the Russians detonated the largest nuke in the history of man. It dwarfed America's largest nuke, which was Castle Bravo, where we basically took out Bikini Atoll, which was an island in the Pacific. Well, what the Russians did in exchange was October 30th, right? Which is in America, that's Devil's Night, the night before Halloween. And I'm going to show you some pictures and some footage of this. And it was delivered by an aircraft it's about the size of an air. It's about the size of a aircraft carrier. It's a Tu-95. Um, and the explosion is just so mind-blowingly huge, and they couldn't really film it close up. The pilots, it was said, only had a 50% chance of surviving, of outrunning the blast. One thing that they did was they cleaned up the bomb so it wouldn't create too much fallout, radiation fallout. So what they did was they swapped out the uranium 238 with lead, only in the bigger part of the bomb. The fission part. So with these hydrogen, these fusion bombs, right? It's different than the ones that we dropped on Hiroshima. This thing was 3,000 times bigger than the one we dropped on Hiroshima. That's how big this was, right? 3,000 times bigger than the one that took out a whole city, right? So that's huge. It blew straight out the top of the atmosphere of the Earth. People could see the blast, could see the flash, could see the orange fireball, could see the mushroom cloud for 1,000 miles. They did this like up towards the Arctic. I'll even put it here on the screen. Here's the area where they dropped it. It's pretty close to the Arctic. So it wasn't close to too many populated areas, at all. So that was one thing, and the fact that they swapped out the uranium 238 with lead to reduce some of the fallout was a smart move. But so with these fusion bombs, they actually use um, a detonation that's the size of the one that we dropped on Hiroshima, or the United States dropped on Hiroshima, and that explosion triggers the greater, you know, fusion hydrogen bomb. So this thing or weapon, I gotta watch what I say on YouTube, man. Even just saying these words is very. You can't say the B word, So and look, I know this thing was way bigger than Castle Bravo, and look, this isn't about just nukes, right? But I just wanted to give you guys an idea of the. This was in 1961, so imagine what we have the capability of doing now, right? Which is very scary. If there would ever be an exchange, um, I don't think it would be good. I think that it would be the end. Um, we would be back in the Stone Age, no doubt about it. It was just chilling, and it brings me back to these experiencers, these people who've had contact with these higher beings, these entities, even the ones that had. Remember the aerial school where the thing landed? So the aerial school was in Zimbabwe. It was like a prep school, and it was like international students were there. And during recess in the morning, this craft comes down and lands in the field close to the playground. So 61 students. So a lot of them ran towards the craft, which is kind of, it just strikes me as funny, like you would think that they would be terrified, but they were curious. And again, that's how kids are, man. And when they got to the craft, these beings got out. They had these big eyes, and they were communicating with the children telepathically. Now, this was in the movie The Phenomenon by James Fox. And he really goes in deep with it and shows footage from when it happened. But the point of this story is these beings were transmitting these telepathic thoughts about our trajectory with technology, where we were going, and how it was going to destroy the planet. And then it brings me back to the incidents that happened at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, and Robert Salas, he was a he was in charge of the missiles at Malmstrom, and he's there, I guess doing his doing his job or whatever, and all of a sudden he comes over the radio and they're freaking out, saying that this glowing orange orb is hovering above the base. So everybody's freaking out. Robert Salas is like, just make sure it doesn't come into the, make sure it doesn't land or come into the base, and they're freaking out. And then all of a sudden, all the missiles go offline. They were inoperable. And they couldn't, it was a closed system. It wasn't like it was hooked into a greater network. This is 1967 that Malmstrom happened. And the missiles were off. And they were off until that craft eventually vacated the area. And this has happened repeatedly in history. Robert Hastings wrote this great book, this big, elaborate book about all these cases, all these witnesses that came forward about this very issue, about UFOs and nukes. And the fact that, and it's even happened in recent times. I mean, as recent as 2011 that we know of. It could have been more recent. You look at the Air Force Base closures that happened last year, and they keep saying it's drones, and I firmly believe that it's more than just drones. I think we're sending the drones up to investigate these things, right? They're getting them, they're seeing them on radar. Pilots are seeing them. So they're sending up drones because it's safer to try to check them out to see what it is, right? And it got so bad that it became this big, big deal in New Jersey, around Picatinny Arsenal and all that, right? So they're very interested in our technology. July 9th, 1962, they did a high altitude nuclear weapons test. This is called Operation Starfish Prime. And there was another one called Operation Bluegill Prime. And it released an EMP that was so strong it knocked the power out in Hawaii. People in Honolulu could see the explosion. Almost looked like there was a sun in the sky. There's a picture of it here. And the other thing that is strange is Tom DeLonge and some other of these people have come out and spoke about how when we did that test, there was another experiment going on, right? And it was the electromagnetic pulse. And the experiment was, could we knock UFOs out of the sky? And that's exactly what happened. A lot of people don't know that, but this information has been coming out. It's been leaked, and it's going to be more mainstream as the years progress, as these facts begin to come out more and more, right? And I think the reason why they're kind of hesitant to release that information is because it's kind of unethical, why would you do that? You send this huge, you cause this huge explosion in space and possibly committed, some type of homicide, just knock these things right out of the sky. I don't even know if they retrieved it. I believe they did. I believe it was a retrieval. That was one of the crash retrievals. And apparently they got more than one. According to Tom DeLonge, they were swatting bugs out of the sky, so to speak, and that these were malevolent entities, right? So it didn't matter. But maybe that's just what they tell us so that they could justify it, right? Makes you wonder, and it kind of coincides with this show about nukes. This whole vibe, man. It's just I hope we never see that day, And thank God they stopped testing. I mean, really. And this whole thing was like a dick swinging contest between the U.S. and Russia, and to this day, it's going on. The same, it's still going on. This these people that are high up in government, it's like they got some type of complex or something where they have to overcompensate or something. Like I don't understand why you would do that. So I wanted to run that by you guys and add that in here. What do you think about that? It's crazy. So the gist of all this, right, is what are they trying to tell us? What is the main message? What is the theme? What is the moral message from this whole episode and from UFOs hanging out over nuke sites, shutting down missile silos, to us having this nuclear weapons test, dick swinging contest with Russia and just crazy stuff, right? What's what's it tell you, right? That we have to evolve here. We have to get out of this territorial ape mentality, man. It's just at some point we have to elevate above the animalistic nature of our existence, right? And I think that's what this is about. I think that that's the whole point of life, man, is to kind of deny yourself those base desires, those base impulses, the to, you know, do these things that are ugly, basically, that are indicative of our nature, uh, our instincts, and maybe they served us in the past to keep us alive for survival, but now it could cause us to not only ruin the planet, but knock us back into the Stone Age, right? We got to get past this desire to compete for resources and clout, power, and control. Um, we have to get past this, and until we can get those individuals, those bureaucratic entities out of power, and install something better, it's not going to stop. You know, you're going to keep seeing these things that we're seeing in the Middle East and that we're seeing in Eastern Europe. It's going to continue. Luckily, we have two big oceans on both sides of us. So here in America, we don't see it. So it's almost like, out of sight, out of mind. But I want you to really like just think about it, and make sure you're educating yourself and do your own research, and figure this thing out. And I think that if enough of us do that and enough of us work towards this goal, right? What's the goal? To rise above this materialist, animalistic, instincts, survival, angry ape type behaviors, rise above that, deny yourself those base impulses, those base desires. And by doing so, I feel that we will evolve, you know, ain't that, I believe that's the point of this, right? This whole phenomenon that we call life, which is just a wild, crazy phenomenon in and of itself, you know? And then when you add in the factor of more advanced life than us that have been present on the planet for a long time, um, it furthers the mystery, you know? It's kind of awesome. So I don't know, man. I hope you like the show. I'm stuttering and shit. I hope you liked the show. If you did, please hit me up in the comments, like, share it to a friend, share it to two friends. See you tomorrow. Peace.